Michael Bridge and Rob Dorset here to analyse and dissect the day's top stories. And boy, have we got a lot of top stories. None more top, if that makes sense, than the battle to sign Benjamin Sesko, which is really ramping up. Now, Manchester and Newcastle have both made bids. We'll bring you the latest details and tell you which of those clubs is leading the chase for the striker. We'll also discuss Jack Grealish's future, out of favourite Manchester City, and the new Premier League season kicks off in just 11 days. And with that deadline looming, we'll talk about some of the frustrations facing the managers in the final weeks of the window. But let's start with the battle for Benjamin Sesko then. Manchester United and Newcastle, as we've said, have both made bids. Who'll get him? Let's begin with the Manchester United side of things. Peter Stevenson is in Manchester for us and joins us again. Peter, good to see you again. Right, what are Manchester United offering?
Yeah, good evening, Mike. You just wonder whether young Benjamin's going to get much sleep tonight because he's been training alone in Germany while both Newcastle and Manchester United have submitted their bids and now must wait patiently. It's a classic waiting game that we see in the transfer window. United's bid went in after Newcastle's second bid. United bidding 74 million in total, 65 up front with 9 million in add-ons. That's slightly under what Newcastle United are offering. United, of course, having finished 15th in the Premier League last season, can't offer Champions League football either. So football logic suggests the advantage would be with Newcastle. But what we're hearing this afternoon is that the young striker, who's been training alone all day, is favouring a move to Old Trafford. What that will do is significantly, of course, increase United's attacking options. We've seen Matheus Cunha come in, we've seen Brian Mbeumo come in, and really, if you like, experienced Premier League performers. And when you throw young Benjamin into the mix, I'm sure that's what Ruben Amorim is hoping for. A really good attacking, potent threat from United, something which we didn't see at all last year. And if he can get those three in position in 12 days' time when Arsenal come to Old Trafford to kick off the Premier League, then he'll be highly delighted. It's a mouth-watering prospect, but like everybody else at the moment in football, Ruben Amorim has to sit and wait with everything crossed. He does indeed. Peter Stevenson, live from Manchester. Thank you. So that's the United side of things regarding Sesko. What about Newcastle? Well, our reporter Keith Downey has the latest from there.
They made that first bid on Saturday morning that was turned down by Leipzig. They asked them to come back with a different structure, different payment terms. Newcastle did that and more and raised their offer last night to 80 million euros, so around about 70 million pounds, a potential 10 million pounds in add-ons. So Newcastle's offer is actually 5 million euros more, should I say, than Manchester United's, as one source is telling us, maintains that it favours a move to Manchester United over Newcastle United. And I think that will be hard, really, really difficult for the people in power here at Newcastle United, who have already seen multiple players slip through their fingers this summer to some of the top clubs in the country. And this looks like it could be another one of those. But worth saying, we've yet to hear back from either of the offers to Leipzig, and we've yet to get clarification from the player. And until that, as far as Newcastle are concerned, their bid is still live and on the table.
Right, they both want him. Rob Dorset, who gets him?
At the moment, you have to say it looks like Manchester United. The sense I've been getting, and you heard from Peter Stevenson and Keith Downey there, the two men who know better than anybody, the tone that they're giving suspects that Manchester United are winning this race. And the impression I get from the people I've been speaking to is that Sesko has preferred a move to Old Trafford all the way along. And that from RB Leipzig's point of view, they've been waiting for Manchester United to reach the level of bid that Newcastle have made. They haven't quite done it yet. There's still some distance off it, 5-10 million euros, depending on the exact figures. But it's pretty clear that he would rather go to Old Trafford. And I think that leaves Newcastle in a very, very difficult position, even though they can offer Champions League football, even though they finished so much higher. They finished 5th compared with Manchester United's 15th last season. We know that Manchester United have been in turmoil. Newcastle have been a very steady ship under Eddie Howe. They've been consistently improving. And yet that history of one of the world's biggest football clubs, I think is probably going to tell in the end.
Is that it? Is that about what's gone before then? Because it doesn't make sense that Newcastle can offer Champions League football while Manchester United were, flirting with relegation last season, and yet they have the edge, apparently.
Maybe an everlasting thanks to Sir Alex Ferguson, possibly, because they are still Manchester United at the end of the day. But speaking to, Brian Mbeumo, he didn't bother him about no European football. Does Champions League matter as much as people let on sometimes? A lot of the time it's a financial package, and it is playing for Manchester United. But look, it's not all over for Newcastle United at all, who, let's just say, since the takeover, have recruited ever so well. But, as Rob says, it does look as if now he is leaning towards Manchester United. But also got to mention the recruitment director, Christopher Favell, who was at Leipzig, who was speaking so highly about Sesko. I wonder if that's playing a key role in this as well. Not just Ruben Amorim, but Manchester United collectively.
But he's untried, untested, really, isn't he? And he's raw, clearly. What do you make of the sort of sums being spoken about forwards this summer?
This is absolutely fascinating because I haven't known a transfer window like this one where we've seen so many world-class strikers on the market, on the move, many of them coming to the Premier League. Let's show you some of the stats that we've been looking at, because I think this speaks absolute volumes. You can see some of the summer signings there and just how much we're talking about. There's a star, of course, next to Benjamin Sesko, because that's not completed yet, but you can see that Hugo Ekitike is at the top of that one at £79 million. Gyökeres, 63.5. Mateus Cunha, not a striker, he's a forward. Same with João Pedro, you'd say there. Look at the absolute bargain for Chelsea at the bottom, Liam Delap there with a £30 million release clause. I think it's right that you put him in this sort of category, this sort of company. I think he could be that good. But Mike, what I think is fascinating is, where do you get the value here with a striker? Do you get the value for somebody who is experienced like Gyökeres, 27 years old, been there and done it, scored 92 goals in 103 games for Sporting?
Yeah, in which league though?
In the Portuguese Premier League, yeah. But he's been there and done it. He's 27. He's a proven goal scorer. Arsenal, of course, were looking at Benjamin Sesko. They were monitoring for more than a year, and they decided no. They've gone for Gyökeres instead. They had the ace trump, the trump card here. They decided Gyökeres. They wanted somebody ready-made to go straight into their side, try and help them win Premier League titles, Champions League. They didn't have time to wait around for maybe 2 years for Benjamin Sesko at 22 to prove what he can do in the Premier League and become that sort of player. Is that where you get the value, experience and goals? Or is it a younger player like Sesko with incredible promise who has got years ahead of him and may grow into that Manchester United side? Remember, Gyökeres has signed a 5-year contract at Arsenal. He will be 32 when that comes to an end. Arsenal have got no resale on him after that. He's worth virtually nothing. Look at Heung-min Son, who we're going to talk to about at Spurs shortly. £15 million, maybe $20 million that Spurs are getting for him. That's a snip for a player of his quality, but he's in the last stages of his career. So Arsenal can afford to write that off because they've got no resale. It doesn't matter. They need a player ready now. Manchester United, Newcastle perhaps don't have that luxury, which is why Sesko is more attractive to them. But I think how you look at that striker bingo is going to be fascinating. We know that every single football fan in this country is doing what we're doing now. They're looking at that list of strikers and going, right, who's got the best player? Who's got the best deal? Who's going to be the best in 2 years' time? It's a fascinating debate, and it's going to go on between Newcastle and Manchester United.
Where's the value then in this list?
Well, if we've got the opportunity to see his record at Leipzig over the last couple of seasons, look, we can debate all day long what's the bigger and better league, Bundesliga or the Portuguese league. I love watching the Bundesliga, but then you've got a lot of German experts. I was listening to Kevin Hatchard earlier. He said the real winners could actually be Leipzig, because they're getting a lot of money for a very good player, but as Rob's mentioned, a 22-year-old. The Premier League is tough. But I'll go back to Christopher Favell, Manchester United. He said in the Bundesliga website, extremely quick, great jump, strong in the air, and despite his height, he's very mobile and technically strong. So maybe paying a little bit over the odds, but if Manchester United can get out the players they want, we know the players who aren't wanted, and I'm sure that might go down possibly to deadline day, but this is a new look Manchester United, and if they do get him, it's a new look front three.
And also Sesko, by the way, if you look at the goals he scored in that Premier League, they're outside the box, they're inside the box. He scores every sort of goal. So I think that's what Newcastle and Manchester United are looking at. Huge potential. And that's worth paying a lot of money for, because we know strikers come at a premium.
Michael just said there, we know the players that Manchester United want to offload. Has Rasmus Højlund joined that list?
Yes. Well, I think he does if Manchester United complete a deal for Sesko. And That's because Manchester United are not the Manchester United of old when it comes to the finances. They can't just scoop up every bit of talent in European football and play them. We know finances are tight, and we know that if they complete this Sesko deal, they'll have spent £214.4 million already in this transfer window. They have to start offsetting some of that cost. Rasmus Højlund, they might get £35 million for, only what they paid for him 2 years ago today, by the way, which speaks a lot about the business Manchester United have done in the last couple of years. But I think they have to start offloading players. I'd expect Garnacho to go if they can get decent money for him as well. We've heard about them being prepared to accept offers for Kobbie Mainoo and some players that are really part of Ruben Amorim's, first choice 11. Such is the state of their finances. So if they're spending £214.4 million and they do get Sesko, yeah, I think they'll look to try and move Højlund on.
But isn't Sesko in the same sort of situation that Højlund was in 2 years ago today? Aren't they similar, like raw, untried, untested, as I said?
And it didn't work. It didn't work with Højlund, let's be honest. And if you look at the figures involved, Mike, they're almost exactly the same. There's a parallel between Højlund and Sesko here. If you look at what happened with Højlund when he was signed a few years ago, he was £1 million cheaper than Manchester United have bid for Sesko now. The add-ons were £1 million cheaper than they were for Højlund as well. It is almost exactly parallel between the two players. Højlund was 20 years old when he moved, Sesko's 22. Both still very raw talents, is the way Manchester United are looking at it. Clearly, the bosses at Manchester United and the likes of Jason Wilcox, who is running the recruitment department, and Flavel, who obviously has got a big part in this as well, they're looking at it going, we think this guy is going to grow into our squad. We think with Brian Mbeumo and Matheus Cunha throwing the crosses for him, making the passes for him, he's going to score a hatful of goals and he could be a Manchester United striker for years to come. They
thought that about Højlund though, Michael. So I asked this last night, I'm going to ask you, is this a gamble, Sesko?
With the fee involved, yes. The fee involved, yes, but I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I think for Manchester United, potentially a year out of Europe might actually be good for Ruben Amorim. He works with a smaller squad, the players he wants to work with, no Thursday, Sunday. OK, might affect them financially a little bit, not majorly. Conference League wouldn't have touched them financially. Maybe just a year, a reset. That's what Ruben Amorim... Do you remember Ruben Amorim said, I don't want to join a club midway through the season? Yeah. He went on and on and on about it. You can see why in the end, with their finishing position. Yeah. But you can see there's something potentially working there, and that Manchester United reset, which starts next season.
One other quick word about Newcastle here, because I think a lot of people have got sympathy for Newcastle here on the number of players they've missed out on, and if they miss out on Sesko. And you're asking the question, well, why would he choose Manchester United over Newcastle with Champions League football and all that Eddie Howe's achieving up there? I think it's interesting. Newcastle could blow Manchester United out of the water if they wanted to here. Let's assume they're going to get £120 million for Alexander Isak if he moves to Liverpool. They've already turned down 110. Well, they could spend all of that money on Sesko if they want to, and Manchester United couldn't get close to it. And I'm sure RB Leipzig could say, listen, Benjamin, you're going to United or you're staying put with us. But they haven't done that. Why haven't they done that? Because they're not sure that he's worth that. There's no point in replacing Alexander Isak, tried and tested in the Premier League, a world-class striker has done it at this level, with a raw 22-year-old, if you're paying almost as much money for him. Newcastle know that Sesko has a certain value and they're not prepared to go beyond that. That, to me, says a club being well run.
I want to talk more about this, but we have to take a break, but I love this. Right, we're going to take that break then. We're going to talk Jack Grealish when we come back. What on earth is happening with Jack? And Yoane Wissa, is he moving or is he not? We're back after the break. See you in a moment. We were going to talk Pep Guardiola, but we've got breaking news. Rob Dorset, what have you got?
Yes, breaking news, literally hot off the press, this one. Evan Guessand, the Nice forward, who's very highly thought of. I was told that a number of Premier League clubs were interested in, were courting him. West Ham were amongst those. Everton were amongst those. It's Aston Villa, I'm told now, that are pushing forward to try and do a deal with Nice to sign Evan Guessand. We haven't had this bit confirmed, but I've been told a number of bids had been made from Villa, which were knocked back or considered. I think there's a bit of a discussion about when is a bid, not a bid, but Villa had made it pretty clear to Nice the value that they were prepared to pay for him. Those are now turning into pretty more formal talks. So Aston Villa looking for a striker. We talked a lot about the potential future of Ollie Watkins. Villa adamant he's going nowhere, but it looks like they're trying to get Evan Guessam, the Nice forward, in alongside him to bolster their attacking options. Talks ongoing as we understand it right now.
Like that, Rob. Thank you. Now, Manchester City have spent nearly £200 million this summer as they look to get back to the summit of English football. Pep Guardiola says his squad is ready to challenge.
How motivated do you see the team being this season?
They love to play. They love to play football. So, of course, they are motivated. Of course, they wanna, as Bernardo said, they wanna compete each other to be our best individually, collectively, and expectation being in the season always. Let's go. Let's go to try to do our best, to win the first games and give confidence and move forward. Of course, we want to try to do it better than the last season, especially in consistency. Of course, it's always difficult, but if we are in the vibe, in the spirit that we start to create in the United States of America and the World Cup, hopefully we can our people will be proud.
For you, what would a successful season be?
I don't know. For the people, sometimes it's everything. Sometimes it depends how we play it, how we perform. So, and at the end, the people give a good spirit and fight and run and give the best. Then after the opponents always having involved. So sometimes you can do your best and the opponents are better. So it's do the best of ourselves. This is what we have to try to do. So we challenge against ourselves. This is the target for that season.
Pep Guardiola there. We haven't spoken much about Jack Grealish, which I'm surprised about. Rob, do you think he's got to go?
Yeah, I do, yeah. And I think he probably will go in this transfer window. It might be a late move in the window towards the back end of this window. It may be that a club takes him on loan, because the big problem is I can't think of any club in the Premier League that wouldn't want Jack Grealish on form in their squad, and that goes for Manchester City as well, by the way, and he hasn't been able to perform to his own very high standards. But it's pretty clear that he's just not happy. He's not happy at Manchester City. We've seen him there training today in front of the fans. He's played football. That's what he loves doing. Remember all those times at Villa we saw him with a smile on his face? I can't remember the last time I saw Jack Grealish smile. And he wants to be part of that England squad at the World Cup next summer. He's a mile off the England squad right now with all the options that Thomas Tuchel has got in wide attacking areas and at number 10. So it's only if Jack Grealish gets a move that he's going to have a chance of doing that. And I think it suits him. I think it suits Manchester City that he goes elsewhere. His wages are the big problem. We know that the biggest clubs in this country, Manchester United, Chelsea, Liverpool, Arsenal, Manchester City, pay a level of wages that other clubs in the Premier League can't compete with, and only maybe 2 or 3 clubs in Europe can compete with. Jack Grealish won't want to take a pay cut. It may well be they have to come to some sort of agreement on a loan deal where, City still pay some of his wages to give him the freedom to move on and Manchester City the chance to move on without him.
Rob says everyone would want him in their squad if he's playing well. Who are the realistic clubs that might get Jack Grealish this summer?
Wow. I just look at Jack Grealish. I'm not ducking out of this one.
Yes, you are.
Go and be a number one. Go and be a number one. Because that's what he's about, as a player and a person. And it would have hurt him like anything.
Yeah.
When the Club World Cup was going on, he was showing on social media that he was doing his individual training. I don't care how much money you earn. That hurts. That hurts. So if he can work out something with his wages, go and be a number one somewhere. Because, as Rob says, you've got one chance here to get in that England squad, and you're miles behind at the moment. That's the truth at the moment. But go and be a number one. So if it's not going to work out Man City, because I know there's been maybe Everton mentioned, West Ham have been mentioned. There might be 1 or 2 others maybe out of nowhere mentioned. It sounds to me, when it's something to do with wages, that could go on for some time, because you've got to speak to the club and try and work that out, because the selling club or club loaning you out want to give you as little as possible. But we've spoken about the Sanchos, the Rashfords. Wages are an issue. If he can sort that out and get a good club, it could be a great year for him, because he wants to be a number one somewhere. And you imagine all the Grealish 10s at any new club.
He got a huge cheer when he came out today for training.
Yeah.
City fans love him.
He looks fresh. New Barnet. Get a new club, and I think his new club will love him, wouldn't they?
I'm just a little bit surprised. You're talking about Marcus Rashford. Where was Marcus Rashford last season on loan? Aston Villa. Where's a club that Jack Grealish knows very well? And yet we're hearing now, in the last few minutes, that they're looking for Evan Guessand, who's probably a replacement for Jack Grealish. You pointed that out to me as well. For Rashford, rather.
Yeah.
So they're not going to go back there, it looks like. But it's that sort of calibre of club. He has to be looking at a top 8 club in the Premier League, or maybe look to go abroad. And I'm sure there'll be plenty of clubs in Europe that would like the sort of player he is. His guile on the ball, the way he attacks defenders, wins set pieces, that would work very well in Serie A, in La Liga.
And that's where City would have to pay more wages, though, you'd imagine.
Absolutely, because none of those clubs, apart from Real Madrid, Barcelona, perhaps PSG, are likely to be able to afford Jack Grealish's wages. So it's a really awkward situation for him. It was nice to see him out there training and get that big cheer today, but you kind of feel that for his and Manchester City's sanity, that they've both got to go their separate ways now.
Absolutely, wish him well. Quick word on Yoane Wissa. What's the latest on him?
Well, look, we know that he wants to leave the club. We know he wants to play in the Champions League. We feel he's only got one sort of opportunity to do this. We know Newcastle want him. We know Brentford want to keep him, which is the key, really. And on Brentford's Twitter, X, I still call it Twitter, there was shots of him today. I'm in trouble. But there's shots of him training today in the first team. People say, oh, yes, someone turns up for work training. It is important because he hasn't trained recently with the first team. So it is a development. Hopefully for Brentford fans who want to keep him, that he'll stay. But we'll wait and see.
Is that Twitter like teletext?
Teletext, yeah. Oh, I love teletext.
Yeah, OK. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about how difficult it is for some clubs and managers at the moment. Liverpool, Chelsea spent over £500 million between them. Not every other club, though, is finding the chance to get players in as straightforward. We'll discuss that and much more here on The Transfer Show. Just see it in a couple of minutes. Hello again. We are going to talk Heung-min Son. Michael, you have an update.
Yeah, look, he's on his way to LA as we speak and should arrive in LA in the early hours of the morning, UK time. Now, we've been saying constantly about Tottenham will not stand in Son's way, where he wants to go if they receive an acceptable fee. Now, as we know, Son announced at the weekend that he was going to leave Tottenham Hotspur. It turns out LAFC was his destination. So negotiations have continued over the last few days, talk around £15 million. We can now confirm the fee is going to be over £20 million.
OK.
And that's going to be, I'm told, an MLS record. So perhaps when the deal has been completed, we'll get an actual figure, but I am told it's over £20 million and will be an MLS record. There's Sonny there, he's looking sharp there. I think he's had a little bit of a trim. He's ready for LA and he's ready for a new venture ahead of the World Cup next year.
But Michael, £20 million, but will Spurs actually still lose given how popular he is in the Far East?
Yeah, I mean, look, he is 33. He's been a magnificent servant to the football club. He's never really asked to leave the football club when others have moved on. And he was the sole surviving player from the Champions League final. There's just a lot of warmth and love there between player and club. And yes, I mean, you know, Spurs have gone to many pre-season tours in South Korea, and there's been hundreds, like thousands of supporters. South Korean fans have visited the stadium, but that's not
the merchandise and all that.
Yeah, but what I will say is that's not to say they're never going to come back again. And there was a lovely video circulating of James Maddison, who we both know well and who loves interaction with the supporters. This Korean fan had Maddison, he was in tears. So there'll be Spurs fans for life because of Son, because of the person he is. And he moves with Tottenham's very best wishes. So look forward to seeing him LA, linking up with his old mate Hugo Lloris.
Yeah, no, we wish him well. Right, I want to talk Everton. Are they going to walk away from Tyler Dibbling, Michael?
No, I don't think they are. There's no definitive on this at the moment. What we do know is that Everton are prepared to walk away if Southampton aren't going to negotiate. Now, what we do know is that there is big money for Tyler Dibbling at the moment, but a £43 million bid was rejected. Now, Everton are reluctant currently to meet Southampton's valuation, which is over 45 million plus bonuses on top. That doesn't sound like a massive difference. I suppose it depends on the bonuses.
But isn't that a lot of money for Tyler Dibbling? I mean, he started last season really well, but...
Same as
Sesko for me. Huge talent. Little bit untested, still young, need to see how he develops. I think 45 million quid's an awful lot of money, yeah.
Yeah. Anyone else that Everton?
Yeah, so look, I've been doing a bit of work on Everton, and I think it's really, really interesting where they're at. It's been made clear to me that they still want 4 or 5 more players from this point, and I think you're going to talk about Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall, even after they get him, and even after they get Tyler Dibbling, if they're to get those two, we're talking 3 or 4 more players after that David Moyes is interested in. A right back, a centre midfielder, a right winger, and a striker potentially as well. I think that's really interesting from an Everton perspective. They're having a really good go in their new stadium. But
they're struggling to get these players. I mean, David Moyes was really grumpy, saying, we've approached all these people and they don't want to come. So are they going to get this 4 or 5?
The interesting thing is that the situation with Everton and David Moyes in charge now is a bit old school. He's doing the deals. He's approaching the players. He's very instrumental in the recruitment at Everton. Doesn't happen at any other club that I'm aware of in the top division at the moment. You've got a head of recruitment, you've got a director of football, they do the business. The head coach goes and deals with what he's got with an input often into the squad. So I think that's interesting to see the frustration from David Moyes' perspective. He's clearly being frustrated in his attempts to bring in the players that he wants. But that's a message I'm hearing about a lot of clubs across the Premier League right now. The people that I'm speaking to who work with a number of clubs are saying a lot of clubs still want to bring 2 or 3 players in. They've been frustrated in the window so far, and the expectation from the agents and the people that I speak to is that the last couple of weeks of this transfer window could be explosive when the dominoes start to fall, when the money starts to flow, when clubs think, right, we've got to go now because we can't wait any longer. There's certainly a lot of appetite out there. I think there's still a lot of money to be spent, Everton and elsewhere, to be spent. It's just not quite ticking yet. It's just not quite. We've not quite lit the blue touch paper, have we?
It's interesting you say not other clubs, because Newcastle and Eddie Howe are in the same similar situation, aren't they? Because of circumstances where he's trying to do the deals and trying to get things over the line. Rob mentioned Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall. What have you got on that?
Yeah, expected to undergo a medical for a fee of around £25 million, which could increase up to £29 million. I think file this under suits all parties, because it didn't totally work out for him at Chelsea. I know Enzo Maresca is very fond of him, but ultimately Maresca's found the players he wants, and he's done ever so well, hasn't he, really? So I don't think Dewsbury-Hall's going with less of a reputation. It's a very sensible signing for Everton. And I think, I'll be honest with you, I think what David Moyes did for Everton last year went under the radar a little bit. I really did, because I remember when people were worried, OK, the bottom 3 were the bottom 3, but we were on air and we didn't know what was going to happen with Everton. And Mark McAdam and I would say, just go get David Moyes. This isn't me saying, really, I got it right. But it's just basically saying it was a sensible appointment and he did a very good job at West Ham, and it's worked out for him at Everton so far.
Michael Bridge, head of recruitment. Armando Broja, Rob, what's the story with him?
Yeah, look, it's pretty clear that Chelsea need to sell some players. They've spent more than £250 million in this window, but they've also recouped more than any other club. £142 million they've recouped already. Every single transfer window we see Chelsea seem to be the busiest club, both in terms of incomings and outgoings. But yeah, Armando Broja is a player they are prepared to let go. It sounds like he's completed his medical at Burnley now, and we expect that one to go through in the next couple of days. And we expect Chelsea to sell 1 or 2 more players as well to try and balance the books a little bit further, because it is still a bit of a bloated squad they've got.
What is the attraction with Broja? Because he doesn't score many goals and he's a striker.
Boy, there's a question for you. Look, I think he's another player who hasn't had a regular run of games, and I think that's part of the problem. Look at him laughing. Look at him laughing there. He knows he absolutely
just doing my job.
We don't do questions here.
He threw that grenade over, didn't he?
Loves it.
Yeah. I think, in fairness, strikers and forwards benefit from playing games. They have a confidence, and I think Broja's confidence has been knocked in recent times. He hasn't had a run of games. He's had 1 or 2 fitness concerns as well. But I don't think there's any doubt that he's a real talent there. It's a question of Chelsea, as one of the elite clubs, they can't give him the time to try and get fit and reach form again by sticking him in the first team, because they're expected to win every single match. Maybe a club a little bit further down the division, maybe a club that's just been promoted, maybe a Burnley can give him the game time that he wants so that he can start creating and scoring goals more frequently, get his confidence back up. And you wouldn't be surprised if Armando Broja, having left Chelsea, suddenly goes on a hot streak. And in years to come, we're saying, God, what a good signing that was for Burnley. Let's see. It's not done yet. but the medical is completed. We expect it to go through pretty quickly.
What I will say very quickly as well, obviously, Burnley was so brilliant defensively last season. They've lost a lot of those players at the back. Lost James Trafford. Scott Parker, we know he's got experience in Kyle Walker. Roy, if he stays fit, and he'll know he needs more. Parker knows what he's doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, I want to get into the clubs that are really struggling to get business done. Now, people weren't with us perhaps in the 5 o'clock hour, but you went through all the players at Newcastle, Rob, have missed out on. Just run us through that, and let's try and put into context how awful a window they're having at the moment.
Not through any fault of their own. Their recruitment process has been really impressive. All that they can do is identify the players and try and sign them. And bear in mind, the backdrop of all of this is a situation which is not of their own making, with Alexander Isak, who clearly wants to leave the club and go to Liverpool, and has not trained with the squad and made it difficult for Eddie Howe and the rest of his teammates. You can't necessarily blame Isak for that. He's ambitious. If you come in and a club like Liverpool turn your head, I understand it. But it's in that backdrop that Newcastle have been trying to do their transfer business. And look at the players they've gone in for. And this isn't just players they've liked that have been on a list. This is players that they've gone in for and failed to sign. Liam Delap left Ipswich, went to Chelsea for £30 million, which could well still be the bargain of this transfer window. Newcastle missed out on him. João Pedro, serious negotiations with Brighton. He went to Chelsea. Hugo Ekitike. Newcastle couldn't compete with Liverpool. He went there on big money. They liked Mateus Cunha and Brian Mbeumo. Where did they go? Manchester United instead. Again, two players who chose Manchester United over Newcastle, which seems to be the same case with Sesko. They needed a centre-back. They looked at Dean Howson from Bournemouth, thought there was good value for money there. He went to Real Madrid instead of Newcastle. And James Trafford, that Bridges just mentioned there, went to Manchester City instead of going to Newcastle. That is an extraordinary list. It's 2 strikers, 3 forwards, 1 centre-back and a goalkeeper who was seriously on Newcastle's list. They were seriously negotiating for, they were desperately trying to sign, and those players decided to go elsewhere. I don't get it. Newcastle have got Champions League football. They finished 5th in the table. They have one of the best, most nurturing, creative managers in this country, in Eddie Howe. He makes players better. If you go to Newcastle, I fail to believe any player would not get better going to Newcastle to play under Eddie Howe. And yet all of these players have turned down the opportunity to do so. I think it's difficult to criticise Newcastle from it. These are circumstances beyond their control. But no doubt, it's been a terrible window for Newcastle so far.
How much is the Isak situation hurting them? Because if you're a player looking in and you're thinking, well, why would I go there when this great player who scores goals and wins games wants out?
Well, if it was a striker, if it's Liam Delap or Hugo Ekitike, you think I'm taking his place anyway, so that doesn't really apply. I don't know. What do you think, Bridge?
I look at Newcastle and I think their midfield 3 is probably one of the best in the Premier League.
Yeah.
Joe Linton, who he converted to a midfielder. Sandro Tonali, who's come back from his ban and just shown his class. And Bruno Guimaraes, we talk about their recruitment, he's probably one of Newcastle's best ever signings. I'm not being funny, but he's brilliant. Every time I watch him, he's brilliant.
Yeah.
You know, Sven Botman's had his injuries, but, you know, they've got Aaron Ramsdale now in goal. So, I totally agree on Eddie Howe, but I think this could be a really busy next few weeks transfer-wise. I'm looking at some clubs, and I know they're getting frustrated and they want to do some business.
Come on, give us some names then. Who wants to do some
names?
business?
Let's do some names then.
Spurs.
Oh, right. West Ham. I think they want a couple of midfielders. I think Leeds will want to do more, seeing probably what Sunderland are doing, because it's going to be tough down there, as we know. Marco Silva, I've spoken to a million times. He's ultra ambitious. He probably didn't like seeing João Paulinho go to Spurs because he was brilliant for them for a few years. Let me have Villa,
Everton.
Villa haven't done anything,
Palace.
have they?
Well, Guesan's the first one they're trying to do.
Palace want to do more. They need to do more. What depends on what European competition they're in. Keith Andrews will need more at Brentford. At Bournemouth, Antony Iraola. He's very ambitious. He doesn't like seeing the players he's sold. So there's a number.
Look, we shouldn't suggest this has been a quiet window, Mike. You know, Liverpool have spent more than anybody else. I think it's £270 million they've spent. They're the reigning champions, for goodness sake. And they're trying to get Isak. They've already got Ekitike that they've added to their ranks. You've got, other clubs as well that are spending in excess of £200 million. Chelsea have spent 214. If Manchester United get Sesko, they'll have spent £214 million as well. It's not like the money isn't happening, but what I think Bridgie and I are hearing from the people we're speaking to on an hourly basis, not just a daily basis, is that there's an awful lot more business out there to be done. Clubs want to do business. They have money to spend. Yes, they're very aware of the PSR restrictions, but they're still ready to go. And things just aren't clicking into place for a lot of clubs. And I think we're talking about the clubs from outside the top six. They all want to do business. They all have to do it with a certain economy. And they haven't quite hit their straps yet. But I think the last 3-4 weeks of this window could be pretty explosive.
And it'll happen.
Yeah.
And isn't it a 7 o'clock deadline this time? 7 o'clock, not 11. I think it's a 7 o'clock one as well. Oh, what a day we've got in store.
So, who else, Michael? Where else are people looking? I mean, you've gone through a few clubs. I'm just intrigued that there are all these clubs looking for players.
Well, look, I mean, we're waiting to see the extent of James Maddison's injury.
Yeah.
I'm absolutely devastated for him. But that could be a bad one. I don't know yet, but I'm only going by what Thomas Frank said on Sunday. I think it's the same knee. We wait to hear from that. Then you've got Spurs in the Premier League and the Champions League. As brilliant as that Europa League win was, and I don't want to speak for all Tottenham supporters, but it was about winning a trophy. But what comes with the trophy was that Champions League football. And Thomas Frank will have to juggle Saturdays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Sundays with a top-class squad. And obviously you've mentioned the goals and assists of Son not being there anymore, but it was the right time. But Kulusevski's out for another few months. So I think Spurs will want to bring in a top-class creative number 10 as well. Maybe a left forward, I don't know. This is down purely to Thomas Frank. Might look at another centre-half because Nicky van der Ven and Christian Romero pick up injuries. So yeah, I'd expect Spurs to be spending as well.
Let me just throw the one other interesting. We've been talking about strikers, haven't we, in this programme? Of course, it's dominating the transfer window right now. Either Manchester United or Newcastle is going to miss out on Benjamin Sesko. And yet they're going to still want a striker. For Newcastle, it's going to be very difficult to reintegrate Alexander Isak. Keith Downey, our man up there, said earlier on that he expects that to happen. He thinks that's the most likely outcome now. But what about either of those two which fails to get Sesko looking elsewhere and thinking Nicholas Jackson at Chelsea, who, with the players that they've brought in,
for 80 to 100 million pounds,
which is an extraordinary amount of money, and that's what I can't understand.
Who's going to pay that?
I don't think anybody will pay that. But if you've got a situation that Chelsea have got now with the quality of players they've got in that position, having signed Liam Delap, having brought in João Pedro as well, I think it's going to be a struggle for Nicholas Jackson to get in ahead of either of those. All right, João Pedro is not necessarily a striker, but he can play up top as well. So you think Chelsea would be looking to maybe offload and get some money back for him? I think 80 to 90 is too much when you can buy Sesko for 74, by the way, the calibre of players that we're talking about. But I just wonder whether either Manchester United or Newcastle, if they can't get him, maybe looking to Chelsea to say, look, can we do a deal?
I can really see Delap having a good season because you forget that Chelsea have already spent. We had that early pre-window, didn't we? He's already really into that squad. And he's a really top player. I think it's a really good signing from Chelsea.
Absolutely right. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we can have a bit more on Newcastle. I'm putting these two on the spot. They know nothing about it yet. And there's a couple of high-profile moves in the Championship to cover as well. That and more in the Transfer Show. See you in a bit. Hello again. We're going to talk Championship now, which means we're going to talk Wrexham. Rob. Oh, Michael even. They got Connor Cody, now Kiefer Moore. Tell us about this Kiefer Moore deal.
Well, they've announced the signing this afternoon. We knew it was close to be happening, but a $2 million deal from Sheffield United. Now he signed a 3-year deal with the Championship club. Whether I say Championship next season, I don't know. The amount of promotions they've had, it's unbelievable. But look, that's another experienced forward in this level with Connor Cody as well. Goodness knows what season they're going to have.
It's fascinating. I think Wrexham and Birmingham City, both having come up from League One, have got the sort of spending power that the parachute payment clubs in the Championship have got coming down from the Premier League. That's the level of spending power these two clubs have got. And they're competing with Premier League clubs for the sort of players they're trying to sign. It's extraordinary, really. And by the way, we're talking about Birmingham. While we're on that subject, this extraordinary battle between Birmingham and Ipswich for Tuba Akpom.
Oh, yes, go on.
Could be serious, couldn't it?
Do you know what? I mean, I know we focus a lot on the Premier League, of course we do. But this is a heck of a story that a couple of our guys have been working on in the Championship. There's this battle between Birmingham and Ipswich for Chuba Akpom. It started when Birmingham thought they had a deal for him. They'd agreed a fee with Ajax of around £6 million, a loan with an obligation to buy, and he was on his way to Birmingham for a medical. Then Ipswich come in at the last minute, hijack the deal and go, OK, we'll match that. And he's on his way to Ipswich. He goes and has a medical at Ipswich yesterday. And then Birmingham come back in and say, well, OK, we might talk about a substantive deal. And that's what we're hearing today now. The latest update on this is that Birmingham are putting pressure on Chuba Akpom to join them. And Ajax are putting pressure on Akpom to join Birmingham because this is a substantive deal that they've got on the table instead of a loan deal. It seemed as though Akpom might have preferred Ipswich rather than Birmingham. We don't particularly know. But that battle between the two of them is ongoing. Could be a £6 million fee. Is Akpom going to be Ipswich or Birmingham? It's a proper tug of war. It's a classic.
It's absolutely brilliant. Right, I said I was going to put you two on the spot. Let's do it now. Right. If you were a Newcastle fan, Michael, I'll start with you. Do you want a raw Benjamin Sesko or an Alexander Isak who's had his head turned?
I love game shows.
If you hadn't have put that, who's had his head turned on the end.
I'd tell you what, I'm going to go with a happy Sesko who's turned down Manchester United because I feel, listening to a couple of Newcastle fans, I've got a couple of Newcastle mates that are really upset about the Isak situation. We know how much they adore their players up there, and if you upset them, you know. So I would.
He scores a couple of goals, first game of the season, all forgiven. We're all football fans.
That's
you know
true.
what we're like.
But are we going to get this in a year's time? I remember, you know, a couple of years ago he talked about Harry Kane, Man City. OK, Man City went away, then it was Bayern, Luka Modric, Chelsea. A year later it was Real Madrid. Do these things actually go away? So if it was me, get Sesko and a little bit more money to go somewhere else. But look, I don't support Newcastle.
Luka Modric and Harry Kane didn't do bad in those years when they stayed, though. They were hardly down in tools, were they?
Well, this is why I don't take these game shows seriously.
I think exactly the opposite. Alexander Isak is a proven goal scorer in the Premier League. I think he gets into every Premier League team in their starting 11, with the possible exception of Manchester City, because they've got not a bad player called Erling Haaland. But other than that, I think he gets into every single starting 11 in the Premier League. And Newcastle have had that. He's loved by the fans up there. I think the fans can get over this. I think Eddie Howe can get over this. We know that Alan Shearer's come out and criticised him, club legend. He's got to build some bridges if he stays at Newcastle, that's for sure. But he is worth a fortune. Newcastle think he's worth 110, 120 million pounds. Liverpool think he's worth 110 because that's what they've bid for him. And Newcastle have turned that down. They don't want to lose him. They can build bridges. We've seen this in the past where players have wanted away. It hasn't happened, but they come back into the fold. Alexander Isak's got Champions League football to play with Newcastle this season if he stays. I think he can be kept happy. And for me, I'd take Alexander Isak every day over Benjamin Sesko.
What do Newcastle do if Isak goes to Liverpool and Sesko goes to Manchester United? What does Eddie Howe do?
Well, look, Newcastle have been, we need to be clear on this, Eddie Howe and Newcastle have been very, very clear behind the scenes. They will not sell Isak unless they get a player of proper calibre in to replace him. So I don't think that comes into it. And I think Newcastle can afford to stick by their guns there and say, no, you're not going anywhere.
What do you think?
I agree with that, yeah, totally. I think if Isak goes, then yes, but Eddie Howe's been very thorough on this. And I like what he said the other day, that people just don't walk straight back into training. They've got to earn it. So look forward to hearing from Eddie Howe now they've returned from South Korea.
Gentlemen, run out of time. Thoroughly enjoyed that. Thank you very much. So much coming up. The transfer show back again tomorrow. Coming up on Sky Sports News after this break, Rangers, Champions League third qualifying. We'll update you with that.
Welcome to another edition of Sports Lab, where we bring you the latest on Premier League transfer moves, medicals, and market activity as the summer window heats up. Villa advancing in talks for Nice forward Gesund. Reported by The Athletic, Aston Villa are advancing in talks to sign Evan Gesund from Nice. While the deal is not yet close, discussions over a transfer fee are ongoing. The 24-year-old Ivory Coast international has been a long-standing target for Unai Emery's side. Villa may face competition for Gesund's signature from other clubs. Broja completes Burnley medical. Two more deals discussed. Chelsea forward Armando Broja has completed his medical ahead of a move to Burnley. Final details of the transfer and Broja's contract are still being worked out. Burnley are also in talks with Chelsea and Newcastle over permanent deals for Leslie Ugachukwu Chelsea, Martin Dubravka Newcastle United, West Ham keen on Villa's Jacob Ramsey. Reported by Daily Mail, West Ham have strong interest in Jacob Ramsey, with Aston Villa reportedly open to offers for the 24-year-old midfielder. Villa value him at around £40 million. However, Ramsey is not yet convinced about making the switch to the London stadium. Nottingham Forest have also shown interest in the past. Wissa returns to Brentford training amid uncertain future. Yoane Wissa has been pictured training with Brentford today after missing their weekend win over QPR. Head coach Keith Andrews revealed Wissa was not fully ready due to missing part of their Portugal training camp while holding talks about his future. Wissa wants to join Newcastle, but Brentford are reluctant to sell after already parting with Brian Mbeumo for £71 million to Manchester United. The club may consider offers later in the window, if they secure a suitable replacement. Chelsea's Omari Hutchinson remains a prime target, and the Bees are also pursuing another forward. That's the latest from the transfer front in today's Sports Lab. Keep an eye on Gesson to Villa, Rodgers' imminent Burnley move, Ramsey's uncertain future, and Brentford's reshuffling post-Mbeumo. Stay tuned, more big moves are coming.